We'll introduce one of our guests because the other one had to step out. This is Erin Weaver. Erin, do you want to just maybe tell them a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your bio?
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, first, I will apologize for our strange situation. My husband, who is also the director of the show, that is our baby, and she has a fever. So we didn't feel like we could maybe put her with a sitter tonight because she's a little cranky. So we live right next door. So thank you for bearing with us on that. Sorry about that. My name is Erin. I come from a theater family, so I did theater all my life, and I majored in theater at University of the Arts in Philadelphia, which is where I met Erin, and was there for a good long time, 10 years or so, and then we were in New Jersey at a theater there for a little while, and then we moved here. So we've been here for about 3 years, but we freelance, so we work all over the country. Wherever the work is, that's where we are. So.
Where are you from originally?
I grew up in South Jersey.
Okay, yeah. Okay. And you said your family is all in the business. What do they do?
Well, it actually goes back to my mom's grandmother. So my great grandma and my great grandfather, who I never met, but I knew her until I was 7. I loved her. They were a vaudeville duo, and I have these amazing pictures of them. It's really cool. She's my muse and inspiration. I love her, so it really, I guess, it was very much in the family. Even in my mom's life growing up, my grandfather loved to sing. It was just very much a part of our lives. So, and then both my parents met at Rowan, what is now Rowan University, which used to be Glassboro State University in South Jersey, as theater majors. And so they both actually, they started out professionally, and then they had a bazillion of us. And my dad is the director of the drama department at Cherry Hill East High School. And my mom, where we grew up, is the director still of the drama department at Glassboro High School. So they both run these programs, and then they run a summer program together that I was a part of for, 20-odd years, our whole family. My older brother is a professional lighting designer. He did the most recent thing that he did that you might know about was Merry Wives of Windsor at the Shakespeare Theater. And my little sister's now majoring in theater. Wow. And my little brother started to major in theater and then switched to poli-sci, and is also now in the Army. Wow. And he had to call me and have me help him break the news to my parents that he was getting a real job. It was really intense. Like, we had to talk them through it. And what's sad is that he, out of all of us, has the most pristine, most gorgeous voice. He is so truthful on stage. He's such a presence, but he felt more passionate about affecting change more immediately than one might hope to do in theater. So there's a brief background.
Wow. So were you?
No.
Okay.
And as you can see, Maisie, even with 101 fever, is like, hi. So we'll see what happens there.
So did the family encourage you to
do
theater? Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not joking. I know it sounds like it's a joke, but my little brother was actually very nervous to have to tell my parents that he was going to quit majoring in theater and go into something. It was devastating. He actually didn't go to college right away. He joined like a show choir that was called Young Americans. I don't know if anybody knows about them. They're incredible. And he went to California, and my parents were like, great! Where most parents would be like, go to college. So it's a very different family.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you and Erin end up here in D.C.?
Well, Erin really had been working here way before I had even really known about this community.
Okay.
At the Folger.
Okay.
He's been, I think his shows at the Folger have, one of the first he did was maybe 10 years back or so. So he already had a foundation here, a small, some roots planted, particularly at the Folger Theater in DC. And then when we knew we were going to move here, because there's so much theater here, and we knew we wanted to have a family, and we wanted to freelance as much as we could in one area. And so we, just started planting as many seeds as we could before we got here, and then I very much like my character. I came in and auditioned everywhere and just, tried to get out there.
Wow. So, what was I going to ask? I guess I would love it if you were here for this part of the conversation, but maybe we can...
Well, it's going to be funny. It's going to be like
we
newlyweds
can
for the
exactly. You're definitely where I'm going with this.
It's probably better this way.
Yeah, so we can play, this will be fun. So, tell us, how did the two of you meet?
Well...
You're going to love this.
Okay, I'll just tell them to be honest, because our favorite show is West Wing, and there's that great line, if nothing else, just be honest, because the truth is easier to remember. It's just funny answering this. Well, let me start by saying this. I just got done, I had to Google myself the other day to find an old headshot for them for the show.
Oh, funny.
And I don't Google myself, which is, I mean, I know it's like common practice, but I guess because Erin's mom has me on Google Alerts, so she'll just tell me if there's anything new coming, and I don't even think about it. So I never did it before. It was really intense. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but anyway, so I did it, and there was this article, an alumni article from University of the Arts, which is the school that I studied at, which is also where Erin was a professor for a little while. And it mentions the two of us, and it references Xanadu and stuff like that, just talking about what alumni are doing. And it talks about how we met after school at the Arden or whatever, which is funny because we didn't. We met at my school while I was a student. He's 16 years older than I am, we never actually met as a student-professor basis at all. It was actually always outside of school, but it can appear so scandalous, which is really fun to watch people squirm. But he was never my teacher, actually, and we were just telling a friend this. There was two opportunities where if we had taken them, or if I had taken them, or if I had the opportunity, we'd probably never be together. He cast me in a show my sophomore year at the University of Arts, and I quit it to be in a show at the theater he started in Philadelphia called the Arden Theater. So I didn't do that with him. And then I was actually supposed to be his student my junior year, and they transferred me out into another class because there were so many kids coming in. So I never knew him, I hardly met him basically all my time in school. And then we worked together on a couple shows at the Arden, and that's how we met.
Okay.
So.
And how long have you been married now?
Well, we've been together for 12 years, and we've been married for almost 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you feel that the actor-director relationship is different when you're in a show with him, since you are married to the
Yes,
director?
it's better.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you just know each other's language,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends of mine in Philadelphia who, well, one couple in particular is a director and an actress, and they will never work together. That was their rule, which I don't mean to appear judgmental because they have their reasons, and I can't pretend to know all of them, but I don't know how to say this without appearing judgmental, because I really do respect their decision, and I think in a lot of ways it's very smart. I just know for us, I think it's benefited our marriage, and I think it's also, without a doubt, made our work. I mean, if I had a choice, I would work with him on every show as a director. And I think the reason, and it's not to say it wasn't hard. I mean, it was hard. We've done a number of shows together now, and the first 4 were hard. I would say this is our most successful collaboration because we've had so many, issues come up between us, and we've just learned how to shorthand, have a conversation about them, or how to just get in front of them and not let those moments happen. I've grown up a lot. I think almost as hard as trying to communicate together and do the work is the social aspect of it. For example, if I'm in the dressing room and I'm sitting next to a fellow actor who is upset with the director, but we're buds and we're on stage together, but they're not aligning. And, common practice is to vent, and you can even do that in a healthy, respectful way that, where you feel like you're trying to communicate, and it doesn't all have to be just negative, but reflecting, figuring out what should I do, and those conversations either do or do not happen, and there's that whole other aspect where you watch and communicate with different people, and there's the other side of it where I go like, don't act that way, and I want to sort of bat him on the hand, and so there's more of that comes up that you really have to, for example, with this show last 5 years, it's just James and I, and I know this seems like, I swear to you that this will seem like what I'm supposed to say, but I'm telling you it's true. I mean, everything's true, right? Easiest thing to remember. It's normal to want to go home and say, look, my scene partner is not quite doing this, and blah, 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 can you get them to do this? You know, and kind of try to direct from the back. And I guess the reality is, one, James and I don't have that much to do together on stage, but we actually, if you see the show or know the show, we did do a lot of the songs as scene work. So when he's looking at me, he's looking at me. He's looking at the scenes we did together. I'm just now no longer physically there. And the same, all of the choices that I've made were off of his expressions and his working with me. And so there was collaboration, but James is so good, and Erin's relationship with James was so honest. And I felt so comfortable enough saying what I needed to say that I never had to come home and go, hey, could you get James to do this, or could you get... So I would say this is probably the first time where I really, one, went into it promising myself not to do it, and two, just never needing to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot, I think the benefits are that I am obsessed with details and specificity. I hate doing a single thing on stage that's not motivated by something. There's even a moment where he has us walking in and looking at the windows for purely a overall storytelling visual effect, but for me, I can't just as an actor come in and look at the window because I know it looks good at that moment. Like, I have to have a reason why. And I don't always need the director to give me that reason. I can come up with my own. But there's similar things like that where he'll say, I need you to cross down and pick this box up because we need it out of the way for the next scene. And I won't do it unless I can justify why, not just because it needs to be gone. And there's a lot of directors who don't really want to deal with that. And they don't like it that you do. And they'll roll their eyes, and there's often you work with directors who, I don't know that they'll say this about themselves, but generally speaking, as long as your acting doesn't get in the way of their vision, then that's fine, And he's not like that. You can pretty much go to him about anything. And I think what's really cool is because we've learned through a lot of trial and error how to have that conversation, he is now making sure that other actors can have that conversation with him. So through some very candid, very hard conversations where I enlighten him a little bit about what our plight is, and where I also get to see his side of it and what he goes through and what he's trying to deal with. Those are conversations that most actors don't get to have with directors. I would say even friends who are really good friends with directors, there's still always something in the back of your head saying, I love this person, they're my friend, but I can only be so honest because I also want to keep working. I don't have to filter myself with him.
Wow.
And so I feel like we have the most candid, and I have grown and he has grown, and I guarantee you that other people have enjoyed tremendously working with him because he makes them safer than a lot of other people do. And I don't mean to be judgmental towards those directors because it's a very hard conversation to have, any of them. And we're just very lucky we get to have it. So it's been a lot of work. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but it's been a lot of work and a lot of time, but I think it's been worth it.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you. Now, you have a child.
Yes.
How is balancing that with the workload of being an actor?
It depends on which moment when you're asking me. Right now it's interesting because I'm like half mom going, oh, she's got a fever, she should be here, that's so bad of us, but I want to be here, and it's been great. I have a lot of fellow actors who ask how we do it and because they want to do it, and I just feel like you're yourself and more. I feel like there's been times before having a kid where things are difficult and you muscle on through, and I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that question. It's a little abstract the way I'm getting at it. I think the hardest single thing is sleep deprivation. It's hard to memorize lines. It's hard to, energy-wise to do all that. But hi, Baba, come on up and visit. But other than that, it's only been tremendously better.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have way more to pull from having had this one. You know, I mean, I remember I did a role right before I had her where it was the first time being a mom, and I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. You know what I mean? I also did a role where actually, in college, I did a show where I was pregnant, and I have this great song about, you know, that first moment where you feel the baby kicking. And I just think back and go like, oh, I didn't do that right, you know?
Huh.
So having her is just making everything better. And it's totally, you know, the logistics, you just work it out.
Yeah.
And we have such an awesome, we have what we call Team Maisie, so. I think it's just made everything better.
That's awesome. I love it. Stepping back a bit, Erin, if you want to introduce yourself, give a little bit of your bio and tell them who you are.
Hi, I'm Erin Posner. I'm directing the last 5 years. I'm a freelance director and playwright, now based in DC for the last 3 years. And before that, Philadelphia and places before. I was in Philadelphia for a long time. I started a theater company there called the Arlington Theater Company 25 years ago. Just 25 years this year.
Wow,
So,
great.
yeah.
He asked how we met.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear your version.
And
of the story.
I'm pulling the Crucible line. The truth is the easiest thing to remember, so.
We met because you auditioned for me for the Conference of the Birds,
Right.
a play that I just did at the Folger Theater this fall. But I directed 15 years ago or so, 13 years ago at the University of the Arts where Erin was a student and where I was a teacher. I cast her in that production. She quit because she actually did a show at the Arlington Theater, the theater I started that I didn't direct instead. And then I met, and so that's when we met, but then didn't get to know her until a couple years later when she actually assisted for me on a show, and then we got to know each other, and then...
That lined up
really well.
perfectly.
What?
The truth matched.
Oh, good. Okay. But this is like this almost like becomes like a game.
Yeah,
show.
that's the exact same thing she said. Look at that.
Those are all. That's the true thing.
Now, how did you get into theater originally?
Oh gosh. Well, that was almost a good story for sitting in a library.
Yeah.
I started, you know, it wasn't until years later that I realized how fabulous my mom had been. Maybe that's a common thing. And put me in every class of every kind that she taught, and particularly the arts, because she loved them so, painting and sculpture and ceramics and dance and piano, and theater was finally one of them. And a bunch of my friends in like junior high school started doing plays, and that seemed sort of like fun. And so I just sort of started casually. But the thing that's kind of nice about the library is I was a huge reader. I read all the time. And my way into theater, the reason I loved it was through story, because my ongoing fantasy as a kid was whatever book I was reading, I would sort of fantasize of being transported into the book, get to live through the life of the main character or the character I identify with, and sort of pop out the other end. And I remember that goes certainly as early as 2nd or 3rd grade. I wanted to be Encyclopedia Brown. I read these books by Lloyd Alexander, The Chronicles of Prydain, which I love, that were like an absolute, an absolute favorite. And so at some point when I realized that theater was basically that, right? You got to sort of live in this other world. So I started acting, and then realized that maybe I wasn't that good. I wasn't bad, and also had some issues with the idea of leading my life at the will of other people who would cast me in certain roles, and I wanted to have a little more control than that. And as soon as I found directing, I knew that I was doing the thing. I felt I was better at it. I felt I had more to offer at it. But the biggest thing that let me know I was doing the right thing was that my ego, which had been a big problem as an actor. How good am I? Am I good? Am I really good? Am I better than the other actors? Am people going to like me the best? How much best? Like, that's how I felt as an actor. And the moment I started directing, I went, oh, am I telling the story? Is the story being clear? Are the actors in the show good? Are they the best I can make them? Am I helping? And absolutely, there's still some ego, and I would like to, it's nice to win awards, and it's nice for people to say nice things, but 1/10, 1/20th of what I felt as an actor. So that felt really good, to have my focus off myself and on to, first and foremost, am I telling the story well? Am I doing something worthwhile for an audience? If you start a theater like I did at a fairly young age, you care about your audience tremendously because you need, like, it's not a theory of sort of needing them or for artistic reasons. You absolutely must have them, and you need them to come back, or else you won't eat next week. And almost literally, I mean, so, or your theater won't survive. And so that, so then that helps you keep your focus on, am I doing this well, and am I telling the story well, and am I serving the story that I want to tell?
Any questions before we go?
I wondered if your theater is still going.
It is doing very, very well. I will go in June. I will go up for the 25th. We have an annual fundraising benefit called the Grand Falloon, which is a word I stole from many, many years ago. It's a Kurt Vonnegut word, meaning sort of a large, he made it up as a sort of a large but relatively meaningless association of people, like Hoosiers is his example. Like, people who sort of well, somehow identify around to something that doesn't really give them anything in common except they happen to be from Iowa or whatever. And I liked that word, and it sounded like a fun party. We were going to a Grand Falloon. So we will have our 25th anniversary Grand Falloon this June. And I still direct. I directed there a couple of years ago, and I still am on the board or an emeritus member of the board. But yeah, it's a similar size budget and sort of scale as Signature, doing 7 shows a year, 8 shows a year, in 2 spaces, and I mean actually probably very similar in a lot of ways. Not as many musicals, although as Eric Schaefer is the premier Sondheim person in Washington D.C., Terry Nolan, who I started the art with, is the premier Sondheim person in Philadelphia. Actually, they're in rehearsal for Little Night Music right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Do you prefer freelancing then?
Well, I've enjoyed a career that has included freelancing, and I've been the artistic director of 2 theaters, and I enjoy being an artistic director a lot. I've worked on the philanthropic side. I've done that. I've done consulting. And now I'm doing more playwriting. I'm doing about an equal amount of playwriting and directing now. So I never thought of myself as a playwright, but the next project I have after this is a play that I've written that'll be at Woolly Mammoth Theater.
What's the title of it?
The title of that play
allowed to say that,
is Stupid Fucking Bird. It's an adaptation of Chekhov's The Seagull. And it's a loose adaptation of Chekhov's The Seagull. Stupid Fucking Bird. So that's next.
Excellent. Now you don't have, you're not really known, at least in DC, for directing musicals, and you're directing...
I'm not known anywhere for directing musicals.
Have you directed many?
Why, yes, I directed one.
Okay, is this it?
No, one previous to this one. Now I've almost directed 2. Which is a little bit of a false... I direct a lot of plays that have a lot of music in them, and I've done a 12th night that had 10 or 12 songs, and I'm working on a Tempest right now that has Tom Waits music, and we were working with Tom Waits on that. I've done, music has been a very important part of my own adaptations and my work with Shakespeare. So having music deeply integrated into the performance is something I've done a tremendous amount of.
Okay.
But strictly speaking, musicals as a professional director, I created a piece called Echoes of the Jazz Age many years ago, which was all pieces in the 20s, kind of as a collage, and that was a lot of music too.
Okay.
But in terms of like a book musical where people sing to advance the plot and the music is the story, I wrote a musical called A Murder, a Mystery, and a Marriage. They did it at Roundhouse Theater up in Bethesda about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I wrote one of the roles for her, and not Maisie, it's pre-Maisie. And I directed that.
Okay.
So that was really the first musical I ever directed, and so this is the second.
Are you finding that you have to approach it differently than you would, say, Shakespeare or something else that you spend more time on?
More than differently, I'm finding how, in particular, Shakespeare, I've talked about Shakespeare sort of ad nauseum in the rehearsal process, particularly in the first couple of weeks, because it's so similar. That a musical, right, that theoretically in Shakespeare you speak prose up until the poetry comes, and the poetry shows up in Shakespeare when somebody is upset, when somebody is banishing somebody, when somebody is falling in love. Romeo and Juliet, speak a sonnet together at the moment that they meet. The poetry is the expression of more than is available to them in the prose. And the same thing is exactly true in a musical, I think, is that you burst into song at the moment that saying, "You're real pretty," doesn't cut it anymore. And so you go, oh, the night is really, whatever the song might be. So when you feel so much, you turn that into a song. Now, last 5 years is they feel, I mean, as it chooses moments from their lives, every moment is a song virtually. So these are it's choosing the moments that are the sort of richest moments, that are hardest, fullest. And in a more contemporary, with a more contemporary composer, more than in something like the classical the Guys and Dolls, you know, the Lesser or Roger and Hammerstein, where it really is more of a book, a typical book story, and then really the high point version of music. That's even more Shakespearean in that way. Jason Robert Brown, like a lot of people, more contemporary, makes more songs come out of more quotidian choices at times, so that they're a little bit more day-to-day rather than the absolute high point. But the impulses are the same. 85% of what I'm doing is exactly the same, except they sing it. Okay. And then the last 15% I'm learning about right now, and I couldn't be doing it at a better place because I have the whole signature team and Matt Gardner and Eric Schaefer around to sort of say, the way this form works is like there are some rules, there are some ways you work with an orchestra, there's some things that are more helpful in terms of just the rules of the game, in terms of lighting or in terms of sound, that help package a musical in a particular way. And so I'm learning some of those things.
Okay.
But it's overall,
the same-ish.
yeah, I mean, it's quite similar, although different enough that it's pretty fascinating. And I'm certainly having a good time, but I want to do more.
Great.
Musicals.
Do you have any in mind that you'd like to do?
I have many in mind that I would like to do. But until someone hires me, I'll just to myself.
That's fair. That's fair. So you mentioned your love for reading. We talked a little bit about the types of pieces you've directed. Someone comes to hand you a script to direct. Maybe you're past the point where people do that and you just get to choose projects now. I don't know.
No, some each. I regularly, every year I probably direct some things that someone just says, will you direct this for us?
Okay.
And then some things in which I go to others and say, can I please do this?
So someone hands you a script then. Mm-hmm. What signals to you when you're reading it, this is a script I want to do, this is a good script? What in that script makes the light bulb go off? Oh my gosh, it's not because it's a hard question to answer, just because of when the words that jump to your mind are so cliche, it feels hard to continue the sentence. Truth, something that is true, that I recognize as real, actual, something that is worthwhile. I mean, there's plenty of scripts that are well written that I don't feel a particular need to tell that story, or I really don't know that I think it's worth the time of the audience to see it. And I believe in doing things that I think are worth our time. And then maybe as much as anything, I guess the true and worthwhile are first. But unique and with a particular voice or intriguing voice or an engaging idea behind it. A show I did last year, 2 years ago, in 2011 I guess it was a play called Lungs by Duncan Macmillan that we did at Studio Theater. And I had met an actress, she'd auditioned for me, we'd had a nice conversation. She mentioned how she'd read this very interesting play. I said, oh, send it to me. It was like literal, and that happens on some regular basis. People send me stuff, or I get into conversations and I get a play. And very often I read the first 5, 10, 15 pages and I go, oh, I see what this is, and that's interesting, but it's not. And she sent me the play, I opened it, I read the whole thing through, and 20 minutes, within 20 minutes after reading it, I was looking for this Duncan Macmillan on Facebook and seeing if I could find him and track him down and see if I could do his play. Wow. And it took one reading, and I was like, it had a voice that I had never heard before. It was interestingly enough, it was about a couple trying to decide whether to have a baby or not. So it was interesting to me at the moment. But it was wonderfully theatrical and incredibly smart, and I thought worthwhile and all of those things. So that doesn't happen very often. Yeah. You read something that's something that, and of course it's a enormously subjective response. Yep. Like somebody else could have read that play, and I'm sure many other people did, and go, "Oh, that's interesting." Not for me. But you just. Are you heading out? Oh no, you're good. Are you good?
Last questions. I might have to
Okay,
figure
no,
out.
that's totally fine.
I'm so sorry.
No, we understand. It's more important.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye, thank you. Bye. Bye.
Okay, that's all.
Oh.
We'll give it another try.
Always.
It's also story time.
Oh.
Any questions while we're... Yes, Steve.
Erin, I know the story of the last 5 years. Is there any dialogue between the two characters?
There is a, do people know
I think you might want to give them a
I
start.
mean, it is a song cycle in the sense there is some spoken text, but it is mostly 14 songs, and it is the story of a relationship over 5 years, the coming together, the marriage, and the breakup, which you find at the beginning. So I'm not giving anything away. What makes it unique in the storytelling is that it is told in opposite directions. The first song of the show is her at the end of the relationship, the next song is him at the beginning. And then they move opposite directions, and they meet at the middle at the marriage. So it's a pretty unique idea, and it makes it all just a little bit more complex and a little richer. What was the question?
Where is the dialogue?
Is there dialogue?
There's only one song that they sing together, which is the one at the wedding. At the engagement. An engagement wedding, it kind of becomes a wedding sort of symbolically, but at this moment of their togetherness, and then they sort of head off in other directions again. There is some spoken text, but that's them on the phone or doing a reading. But it is basically songs. It is all sung.
Now, I know you've wanted to do this project with this cast for a while. What drew you? That's right.
Yeah.
What's drawing you to this piece, to this cast combo?
Well, this is where maybe I don't make a liar of myself. It is true. I think people recognize this stuff as sort of. I mean, it was in fact so true that the playwright was sued by his ex-wife. So it was particularly true. But it is true. It talks about true and hard and real things about relationships. It is. I do think it's worthwhile because I think it hits on very sort of core human needs and difficulties and struggles. And it is told, he is a brilliant songwriter, I think. And one of the fun things about being in this world, whether it's doing an adaptation of my own or whether it's directing a musical or a play or Shakespeare, that very often it's not very common in your life you get to listen or read something 10 or 20 or 30 times. Or 50 times, or whatever it is. And then as you get further and further into any work of literature, they tend to either, you begin to go like, oh, that was a little awkward, they didn't put that together that well, that scene wasn't really necessary. It begins to sort of break apart a little bit and lose a little of its luster. Or as you get deeper in, you go, oh my gosh, they haven't wasted a word. And even though I'm going to have to cut this, it doesn't want, it recedes or accedes or something in your brain. And writing really good lyrics, having now written some songs, I wrote this musical, and there's actually in Stupid Effing Bird, there's 3 songs that I wrote the lyrics for as well. Writing good, here's I think kind of an interesting little point. Okay. Writing good lyrics is not very hard. Writing a decent lyric, kind of a nice little poem, something that can be put to music, writing a pretty good song, it's not that hard. But writing a really good song, or an amazingly good song, is incredibly hard. I mean, it's a really interesting, I find that a really interesting, you write a pretty good poem, you write a little sentence, people can put music to it, and it's like, but to make it where the music truly fits the words, and the words the music, and where it really lifts in the right way, and where there's a real idea at work, I think is really, really difficult. And I think that really every song in this show is really good. And the actors find that when the emotion wants to rise, the song will be there to support them. And the music and the orchestrations, I think it is songwriting at a very, very high level in a way that I only appreciated more and more with every day of rehearsal. So unique voice, absolutely worth telling, and very, very true.
Excellent. Now you mentioned the convention of time in this piece. Does that present any special challenges to you as a director? Or is it?
I think it presents more challenges for the actors who
Okay.
have to they have to play themselves and the other person in a sense at the time. Like we sometimes rehearse them together as though they were in a scene, but then they have to sort of create the other person's performance in their mind as they're doing it, which is just a fully artificial thing to do. Do you know what I mean? There's no life equivalent to it. Right, you turn. Oh, okay. You know, like we don't tend to do that unless we're crazy. So that is I think an interesting challenge. Is that a challenge, Erin?
I'm listening to you. I know it sounds like I should get a lot of
Points.
No. I should get a lot of credit. Yeah, or points or something for how hard it might be. I don't think it's been that hard. I mean, I think it's a lot of work, but I don't think it's been. And I also don't think that because particularly for my character, I start at the end of the relationship and go backwards, which everybody kept telling me you have the hardest track, that's so hard. I don't think it's hard. I think because the songs are so well written, when you just do what the song asks you to do, you're in that moment doing that song. I don't know, I can't explain it. I understand why it should be hard, and I haven't found it to be.
I'd like to explain a little bit of why it's not so hard for her. Because one of the things that makes actors really, a very helpful thing about actors is something that we would call, I mean it's a pretty logical term, emotional accessibility or emotional access. Erin is able to start successfully at the end quite easily because she has tremendous emotional accessibility. And so for her to drop right into the hardest part of the play right from the beginning it's simply not that hard for her, which is part of the reason I would want to do this play. These two actors are so good. And so, watching a breakup, watching a relationship fall apart is not, if it's told with some truth, neither of them will come off perfectly, right? Since relationships are usually about the actions of both people, and neither of them probably behaved perfectly if it's going to end up not working. And a story in which only one of them was terrible and the other one was perfect would not be very interesting and probably not a very true story. So having actors that are particularly, not necessarily likable, but understandable and true, so we recognize where the struggles are and the complexity of it was really important to me, which we have in both of these actors. I don't like to overblow horns or whatever, but I feel like I can do this easily here in terms of the acting, because they're both, if you see the show and you don't like it, it is Robert Jason Brown's fault or my fault. Jason Robert Brown, whatever the hell his name is. Sorry. It is his fault because you won't like the play, or it's my fault because I directed it badly. It is not the fault of either of the actors, because I think they're just doing a superlative job.
I haven't seen the show before. I know that it's particularly difficult, I feel, in the structure to make Kathy's journey as sympathetic as Jamie's, just because Jamie's is linear in track.
Right.
And I feel like maybe I'm just a poor audience member, I can only go one linear direction. But I feel that he gets an embryo that grows into this relationship, and it's almost like he gets to say, there, see, we're Kathy.
Yeah,
and I wondered how you as a director, did it present, were you focused on trying to make that is that an obstacle? Was it an obstacle?
She's more qualified to answer this question.
Cool, yeah.
No, I mean, well, it is right to ask him, because I just basically had to rely on his judgment, because the reality is that first song, while those are all very nice things that you said about me, I think also too the material is so truthful. It is every word feels like exactly what you would say in that situation, and it's so like a monologue. Musically, the way it's written is it sounds like all I have to do right now while I'm talking to you is just also sing when I'm talking, and it makes sense. Like, that's what it feels like. It's better than that. It's better than this. Please come see the show. Cut that part out. No, but there is a kind of it is very organic, and so you can do the songs very truthfully, I think. But so in that said, that first song, I tended to be very emotional or very angry, and because I feel like that's what's written and that's what I hear. And then I had a lot of Erin and other information coming in saying like it's too dark, it's too angry, like you have to find other colors, and think of it more as like talking to your best friend, which you kind of laugh more in your misery, you joke with each other, like thinking about a different sense of who the audience is to sort of lighten up the piece but keep it truthful to. Hi, sweetie. Keep it truthful to. This is like the weirdest thing ever. You guys are
This is the best film
we
I've
did have a
ever made.
babysitter, it fell through, and then she was sick, and we were just like, all right, well, we're going to commit to this, so thank you for your patience. Yeah, really. This is a sequel to the next 5 years. But it's really hard, because I listen to his songs, and even playing the part of Kathy, I go, come on, Kathy, get up. Just put the dress on and go to the party. Like, even I get frustrated with her. And I think the things that are his shortcomings aren't as obvious as hers.
Yeah,
The
because he
other
wrote
thing
it.
is- Yeah. So he might not realize the ego that's coming through, or maybe he does. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Sometimes I give him a lot of credit for how much he puts himself out there. And he doesn't spell it out, but you have to see it. But I think the other really tricky thing is his relationship goes really great and his career goes really great. Her relationship is great, starts out really great, but her career is always crappy. And so where he gets to sing either and about great career, great relationship, she's still always singing about her bad career and feeling negative about that. So I have more negative songs than he has too. And then also what we learned yesterday is my positive songs, by that point you know what's been going on. So when you hear me saying, come on, let's move in together, this is going to be awesome, I love you, people don't have fun with that because they're going, oh, you poor dear. You have no idea what I know. So it has been a difficult track, but But I've had a lot of support, and you're right to ask Erin again, because he really has been helping me to keep things positive at times where I think I would have still played angry or bitter, to keep people on my team, on her team. So I think you're right. I think it's a really hard track, and everybody says so, and I agree. And hopefully you'll be on her team more than you would expect. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Do you relate to the character at all?
Yes, I relate to half of her, and then I proudly feel like another part of her I used to relate to.
Okay.
She has a great line. She says, I'm not always on time, please don't expect that from me. It's hard to say it without singing it. And I know sometimes please don't expect it from me. I will be late, but if you can just wait, I will get there eventually. Not like it's in my control, not like I'm proud of the fact, but anything other than being exactly on time I can do. And there's a part of Kathy that feels like she's the victim all the time of like, the career is hard and she's up every morning, but everything is hard on her and it just sucks for her and she would be in a better place, but everything is against her, which I think I definitely had certain aspects of my life I felt like, and thanks to my husband, it wasn't welcomed at the moment, but but I've had a number of moments where I've been really grateful. You see something breakable? You go for it, right? I've been really grateful to have someone in my life say, you're not the victim and you can take control. And so I think it's been selfishly empowering for me to feel like, okay, thank God I've stepped out of that part of who I am, but I can certainly relate.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Steve.
Comment, Erin, something you said much earlier about moving the box without a purpose.
Yeah.
I can't cite an example, but I've seen that where things get done and it's like,
Right.
they're moving it just to get it out of the way.
Right.
It's like when somebody drops something,
Yeah.
a prop, you know darn well that it shouldn't have been dropped, and they pick it up.
Right.
And they're picking it up to pick it up, not because it furthers the story.
Right.
And it can become very obvious.
You know what's so great about those moments too? On particular shows that I see, I find those to be the most riveting, truthful moments ever, because people are really doing something with intention, and if everything that they've been doing beforehand is so blocked, or even if it starts out very truthful and very detailed, but people go into autopilot. And James and I were just talking about how dangerous a musical can be, because as detailed and as truthful as we're trying to keep every moment, there's a rhythm, and muscle memory kicks in, and you could lose that fresh, in the moment, thinking of the idea before you say it. And you want to throw this? Here you go. I think the way that Erin and I work, and certainly the way James works, it's exhausting, it's tedious, and then it's exhausting to keep up every night. It's mentally exhausting to talk, to pretend to talk as truthfully and as originally and as fresh as I am with you right now every night. To pretend to do this exact speech with you every night as though I'm coming up with the idea right now.
But there's
but nothing makes me more. But I think people pay a lot of money to come see theater, and I think my job is great. And I think it's the least that I can do to make sure that I do that every single night, and that every choice that I make, the worst are in tech, when everybody else's opinion comes in visually and goes, well, this can't be here, and we have less time. So we have 3 weeks to come up with all of these ideas, and suddenly the director goes, actually, we need it to be, this just happened. I had the whole first song blocked out in a way that felt great, and then suddenly it all changed, and now it's just on a bed. And everything changed, and I was able to look at him and say, I need to still give this as much work as I would something I worked on for a week. I can't do less because we have less time. We have to make sure it's still just as truthful. And I can't say that to every director.
In something that's patterned, whether it's Shakespeare, whether it's whether it's Shakespeare or a musical, the more patterned, the more it needs to be immediate, right? That if you're doing something that is very, very much realism, actually like Beth Henley in the Crimes of the Heart, but any play that is sort of realistic, people talking, saying real things, it won't be as transparent if it feels a little bit, if they're not quite in the moment, because the language is colloquial and it feels natural, like a movie. Like a not very good actor can get away with being in a movie because everything's real around them, and they go, oh yeah, sure, hey, nice vest. And that feels realistic, and whether they say that well or not doesn't. But the richer the language, the more patterned it is, the harder you have to work to make it seem immediate, and the more important that you do. So, and I would put Shakespeare verse and musicals at the high, to try and be acting as like, I'm inventing this at this exact second. The orchestra, oddly enough, just happens to be here. But that's the particular kind of lie that a musical is, right? Is sort of like, hey, but I hey right on 4 counts, but that which is again why it's a which is why I see a fair number of musicals. Particularly, there's a kind of old-style musical that didn't put any value on that. That it was just all about a kind of presentational, more in the world of opera, where it was just about the quality of voice or performance. But for the most part, that's either gone away or going away, and the great musical theater actors are absolutely some of the best actors in the world and are as good as anybody because the standard is so high to be outstanding actors as well as having great voices, etc.
Great. And you begin. Oh yes.
I just have a question. Can you, as actor and director, go to an evening of the theater and put your analytical side aside and just be there?
No. The question was, can we go to see plays and put our analytical side away?
No, I never have.
No. Yes. I would say once every 2 or 3 years. I can put it largely aside but the level of quality has to be exceptional. And sometimes it's easier with a new play or a play I don't. If I go see a Shakespeare play, unless it's like King John or something, like something truly obscure. Like if you know all the words and you've directed it before, if it's any well-known piece, it's just so much harder to not be going, oh, how is this director interpreting it? How are these actors choosing to do it? I don't know if anyone just saw. I just saw Good People at Arena Stage.
And I had a great time in the theater. It was a really good play and really well performed, and I didn't know the play before, and my analytical head came into it for about 5 minutes of the night. So overall, so yeah, it happens. For me, it happens. It's just hard. That's the exact way I think in any profession. If this is what you do, what you spend all of your time thinking about, it's hard to just be a layperson in any way. But boy, I will say that was a very good experience. I mean, I see good things in DC all the time that I lose myself for a while in. But boy, when I see those rare performances that totally take me, I'm literally sort of high for a week. I mean, there's nothing, because I'm so critical. When it really works, I'm ecstatic and can't stop thinking about it, and it just really stays with me.
Any other questions? What are some of your, as we wrap up, what are some of your favorite productions you have worked on thus far in your career?
So my favorite productions I've worked on, well, the last 5 years here.
Excellent.
I've had a great time. It was such, it has been really, really fabulous and fun, and I really love it. I love this piece. I like these guys. I can't believe I'm going to go to this first. I mean, Arcadia, that I did at the Folger about 5 years ago, that Erin was also in, and a number of other really fabulous local actors and a couple from around the country. I don't think there are no modern plays any better than Arcadia. I don't think, as far as I can tell. I mean, I think it's just a spectacularly good play, and I had a great time working on that. There's been a number of the Shakespeare productions that I've done that have been particularly sort of joyful and fun. I'm very lucky in that I get to, my own adaptations are, more is asked of me in a different kind of way, and so that brings out a certain kind of pleasure. I'm so lucky that I get to spend all of my time writing plays and directing plays, and I've done children's theater, I've done Shakespeare, I've done musicals, I've done classics, I've done new plays, and I like them all, and I've tried very hard to build a career where I didn't get to be doing just Shakespeare or just any one thing, where I get to do as many different kinds of theater as possible.
And I guess as we're wrapping up, the final question for me tonight is, and you can come answer this too if she's in a good place, or if you just want to answer from back there, whatever.
Okay.
But for both of you, why theater? What do you get out of it? Why do you do it? What does it do for you? Why theater?
Well, there's a series, like many of these, there's a series of answers to that, because there is I would like to hold on to the fact that I think that, occasionally you do some good in the world. Two of the pieces that I've written, the two of the adaptations I've done, The Chosen and My Name is Asher Lev, both Chaim Potok novels, that I think are really, really wise works of literature that I know have sent hundreds or thousands or maybe even many thousands of people back to the books and back into think seriously about the questions that he raises, and I'm really proud of that. So there is a thing about that theater can be healing, it can be genuinely entertaining. I would like to think that it serves people in some way. Erin and I have both spent a lot of time as theater educators as well, and I think a lot of times in working with young people on theater, whenever I'm asked the question by various young people I meet, kids of friends of mine, or whatever, it happens on a fairly regular basis, I never necessarily say, yes, you should go into the theater and be an actor. It's quite a hard career in many ways, but I do think that everyone should study theater, because it's the study of how to be a human being and who you are and how you operate in the world and how other people operate. So I think it's a fabulous thing to study, and I think our teaching does some good. But the real, I suppose, the real truest answer, while I think those are real and true and I'm proud of them, is that I stumbled into something that I love doing every single day, and the fact that I can actually make a living for myself and with my family doing nothing but doing theater all the time, and between teaching and directing and playwriting, is such a ridiculous gift. And I feel so overprivileged about the fact that this is the way I get to spend my life. I just feel incredibly lucky. So that's Erin.
about you?
That's a really good answer.
Go, go, go!
I was just back there thinking about what I'd say. Kept saying, what he said, what he said, what he said. I mean, the thing is, I came by it honestly, obviously, because my family was all in theater, so it would be a little pretentious for me to say, oh, because it's for the good of the thing or the thing or the thing. I was born into it, so I don't think I thought I was going to do anything else. I did for a brief moment think I was going to be a gym teacher. But I've just been very lucky that it just so happens to be the thing that I was sort of born into that I'd love to do. Also gets me here, talking with people I don't know. I think awards can be really silly, and you can come up here. Not a great judgment of really who is the best, but it is a really cool opportunity to get to thank people. I think it's one of those jobs where, you don't always get to. A lot of people have jobs that are thankless or they don't get to thank, and we get to thank when we bow at the end. We get to thank you. You get to thank us. I mean, there's a lot of thanking and gratefulness involved that's just not in any other job. So that's sometimes it can be tricky, right? But most of the time, it's just lovely. I'm a part of a profession that's puts people face to face, and this is coming from someone of my generation who still doesn't have a smartphone.
I just got it.
This month I'm ready to upgrade, and I'm terrified of what I'll become.
Change happens quickly.
Yeah, I just think I'm grateful. I love all of the other outlets, the outreach, the theater education. It's just one of those jobs that just the doors just keep opening in so many other different ways. So, I guess if I was to be honest again, there's. You say why theater, I would say because I don't know what else to do. I'm just lucky that I happen to love it, and that I think it can be a part of good in the world.
I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming tonight.
Totally.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough for your kindness with bringing our sick child, our nosy running child